the story of One Piece, there are two core power systems that exist in the verse. At the very beginning of the story, we were introduced to Devil Fruits, and during the half point in the story, we were then introduced to Haki. Whilst Devil Fruits are praised for being one of the most creative power systems out there, the same can't be said for Haki, as the community's general consensus on Haki isn't that positive. So in this video, I'm going to go over why Haki is bad and how Oda can fix it. But hold on, before I get into the video, I need to put you guys up on something real quick. See this here, YouTube is telling me that 85% of you guys haven't subscribed, so you know what to do. Plus, hey look, it's a benefit for both of us. You get to see more content like this, and obviously you're showing support to me, so hey look, it's a win-win. But that's enough of my babbling, man. Let's just get straight into the video. Okay, so to start the video, I'm going to go over why people believe Haki is bad, and then I'm going to go over how Oda can fix it. With the fixing it part later, it is going to be split into two situations where I'm going to go over what Oda should have done and then what he can do to improve it now. Now, from what I can gather from people not liking Haki, I think it's mainly from Conquerors and Advanced Conquerors, but I'm going to delve into the other problems that it does have, and I do believe the observation Haki to the community is a massive question mark as well. Now, I've heard a few people complain about Armament Haki, and I do feel like Advanced Armament Haki, where you got internal destruction and you got emission, I feel like they are very excessive, and I don't feel like Oda really needs them, and that is probably why people think Armament Haki just kind of needs to be like the regular armament. There isn't really anything else you should do past it. Like when Katakuri and Luffy were using it in Whole Cake Island, that felt like where it should have stopped. Like, you shouldn't have gone any higher than that, because obviously you should just sharpen your Armament Haki even more. You don't really need to get into the internal damage and everything, because it feels like you're just giving the character an extra ability that they kind of don't need. And you don't like to use internal destruction. You need to obviously punch hard enough to damage the person anyway, and then the internal destruction is just an add-on to what you're doing. So I feel like internal destruction isn't really needed, and that's the exact same thing with emission. Emission Haki is used like one time, and I feel like internal destruction is used more because obviously with the handcuffs and then damaging Kaido, but emission Haki is just for like the no touching thing. And then on top of that, obviously with clashing with Kaido later where he doesn't want to get burned by his magma. But I feel like if you'd have just said, oh, Luffy's Armament Haki is so strong that the magma doesn't burn him, nobody would have batted an eyelid, and we'd have been way more like happy with that answer than you just adding on emission Haki for the sake of adding it on. And one thing I will say is that I feel like a lot of the power-ups through Wano just feel very, very pointless. And when I say pointless, I mean like Oda could have left them out and we wouldn't have needed anything else. Like, I even say Future Sight from Whole Cake Island was kind of excessive as well. And I'm going to get into Observation Haki right now. Observation Haki is quite literally the most inconsistent thing that we have seen in One Piece. We don't know if it's active 24/7. We don't know when it's active 24/7. We don't know the full extent of its power. There are a lot of things that Oda hasn't explained to us, like, can we sense people from very far away? Like, I know a few characters can do it, but it's kind of like you have to hear voices, or you can just sense their Haki, or it's like he doesn't actually put a nail on it and says this is what happens. It's not like with chakra where it's like, oh, I can sense their chakra, or this, that, and the third. It's like, oh, I can hear their voice with observation Haki. Like, what does it enhance your ears? Does it enhance your brain? Like, what does it really do? And it's like, oh, you can sense how big somebody's Haki is, or how much Haki somebody has. I know Law did kind of say that, but that was more because he can't use his Devil Fruit. And for me, it's kind of confusing, because it's like, okay, cool. If you can measure how strong somebody's Haki is, it's like, what are we trying to now mirror it to chakra and ki? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people do not like with Haki. It's kind of like it's trying to mirror what ki, chakra, and all these other power systems like Nen and cursed energy from Jujutsu Kaisen. It's like you try to incorporate that into One Piece when I don't feel like Oda needed to even really do that. Like, arguments around Haki happens every single day because Oda hasn't been straight up with us. We don't know how Haki truly interacts with somebody's stamina. We don't know how observation Haki is active. Like, we don't know if it's active 24/7. We don't know if Congress Haki drains your stamina like with Zoro. Like, is him using his Haki at max output drain his stamina? We're gonna obviously assume it does, since in every other power system it kind of does that exact same thing, but One Piece could be different. So we kind of like, it's kind of weird with how Oda doesn't really explain it to us, when with every other power system there is out there, and even with Devil Fruits he explains it to us, but with Haki he gives us in like little dribs and drabs and expects us to fill in the gaps, or expects us to wait until he fills in the gaps. And it's kind of like, you could just explain it, like give us one massive exposition. Like, I wouldn't mind if on Elbath or like somewhere else, somebody fully explains how Haki works, all the ins and outs, and like, it doesn't need to go, okay, when I say all the ins and outs, I mean give us like concrete things on how observation Haki works. Is it active 24/7? Because obviously from what we can see, you can get snuck in One Piece, so it's not active 24/7. So it's kind of like, what really is the purpose of observation Haki? Now don't get me wrong, observation Haki does have stuff like, I don't know, just sensing people regularly and obviously future sight, but then it's kind of like, okay, cool, what's the point of me having something that's meant to enhance my senses when I can still get snuck with it? Like, it's meant to, I feel like observation Haki is meant to be active 24/7, which makes you immune to being snuck. So it's like, okay, you can sense it, but if you don't react in time, then that's on you. Like, that's just you being slow. So if you were to get snuck, your observation Haki will go off, and it's like, okay, cool, and then I can react in time. I could go on forever with observation Haki, since I feel like there are a lot of flaws of observation Haki, but we need to move on to Conqueror's Haki. And Conqueror's Haki, that is something that Oda really needs to patch up. Oda flat out not telling us what makes a conqueror, and then telling us when somebody is using Conqueror's Haki. It's kind of like, we don't know when they're using it, because you haven't been straight up with us, because we've seen people with black spots like, I don't know, OT or Katakuri. We know damn well they're not using advanced Conqueror's Haki, but it still has those black lines. So then when we see somebody like Kobe use it, who many people think, okay, he can have it, we don't know if he's using it or not. Just like with observation Haki, I could sit here for ages and go over why obviously Conqueror's Haki could be improved and needs to be improved, since there are many things he hasn't explained. But I think this is the perfect time to where I can give you a scenario where Haki could have been perfect and there would have been no hiccups in it. And I'm going to segue into that now. Right, so I know that we're too far deep into the story of Haki, so it's like the suggestions I'm going to give now aren't going to help Oda, but in the section after, that's where the things that can happen now are going to be. But I'm going to give you how Haki should have been, or could have been, if Oda wanted to do it right. Now to start, I want to go over the biggest problem I have with Haki, and that's observation Haki. I feel like he should just remove it, and when I say remove it, you're still going to have observation Haki, but instead of it being this grandiose scale, it's just quite literally going to be a spidey sense. We're not having no future sight, we're not having no, I can sense how big somebody's Haki is, forget all of that. It's literally just a spidey sense, so it's active 24/7. Now, where I say, obviously, I'm not trying to have people sense how big somebody's Haki is. I'm not trying to do a Dragon Ball as like, oh, how big is his ki? Like, we're not doing that. The most you're gonna get out of this version is that, okay, I can sense the Haki, I can see, obviously, they're there, I can feel like they're coming. That is about it. Like, if this basically doesn't make you immune to being snuck, but if you get snuck or you get hit, that's just on you. Just not being able to like react in time. That's literally it. Unlike the observation Haki now, where it's like you have to have that active and then you can then sense them coming towards you. Like, I don't understand why that's a thing. Next up is Conqueror's Haki, and Conqueror's Haki, we need to get a straightforward explanation on what makes a conqueror. That is what we need. Once we have that out of the way, we can then segue into, you know, the other things like advanced conquerors. And I'm going to tell you this now, remove that from the story, remove it. And instead of you making your Conqueror's Haki to how strong you are, make it to how strong your will is in general. So even if Luffy was like 2 years old, yeah, but he still had the exact same ideals and like will strength as he does as he is now, as in his 20s, he can still go equally for Roger on his conquerors and they can clash. That is how your Conqueror's Haki should work, because it's like your Conqueror's Haki is your will, so it's a measure of how strong your will is. Next up is armament, and this is where I'm going to explain why I said remove advanced conquerors. And I feel like armament should just be like, you can see it. So whenever somebody activates armament, yes, you can see the black on their body. I don't know why they're trying to make it invisible in One Piece. Like, relax and all of that. Just make it so you can see it on their body, keep it at its base, and then you can just strengthen it over time. You like refine your armament Haki, like how you, I don't know, you sharpen a sword, if that makes sense. The reason I say remove advanced conquerors is because advanced conquerors, it's just an extra way to get more power. I don't feel like you really even need it. You can just keep armament Haki and then just be like, your raw strength just gets stronger and stronger and stronger over time, and that can just like, you don't really need advanced conquerors. I feel like personally advanced conquerors is probably the most like useless, nothing ever buff. Like, it just improves your AP. That's about it. Like, you can remove that out of the story and just say, oh yeah, I've improved my armament and my raw strength, and it would do the exact same thing. Like it just doesn't change the story at all. Now I know a lot of men are gonna be like, oh, you're a Sanji fan, so of course you're gonna say this. First of all, my favorite character is Odin, so I don't really like it doesn't really bother me. But I just feel like it was introduced so late into the story to where it's like it doesn't really like, it's a grandiose power up. Don't get me wrong, it's a grandiose power up. Like if you have it in the story now, it's great, but it could have been removed, or we just couldn't have had it introduced in Wano, and Wano would have went the exact same. Like there wouldn't have been anything different. Okay, so to recap, this is what I would do with Haki personally. Make observation Haki or spidey sense or something you can use to enhance your hearing or seeing. If you want to obviously see further and hear further or whatever, you obviously have to activate that. But for just you trying to sense people trying to sneak you, your observation Haki is up 24/7, so it just doesn't really bother you too much. Almond Haki should stay in its base and appear when the person uses it, and obviously you can just refine it over time. And Conquer should stay in its base and it's as potent as your actual will is. Okay, so now that I've gone over what I would do with Haki itself, I'm going to then go over what Oda can do in the story now to improve Haki. First of all, I feel like in Elbaf, the first thing, or one of the first things Oda needs to do is explain what really makes a conqueror. Because I feel like this is where most of the discussion around Haki even stems from, obviously aside from observation Haki. If Dory and Broggy and like some next old wise giant can sit down and tell us, alright, this is what makes you a conqueror, that would literally clear up 99% of the debates, or the big debates inside of the community. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, but then we get no. This then allows us to really go into characters and really see who can be a conqueror without us being like, oh yeah, I think this character can be a conqueror, because it's like we're gonna do that forever until we get a full-on confirmation for it. Once that's done, we need like a full-on like explanation on how, if you overuse your Haki or something, or like if Haki can even exhaust you out like that. I do understand that Gear 4 in a way can do it, but that's Gear 4. And I know we've gotten certain things with Zoro and Enma and stuff, but he was already like tired at that point, so I don't really feel like that is a valid reason for that. A proper indication on what really goes on with observation Haki, like okay, if somebody's observation Haki goes off, we need a reoccurring thing to where it's like, okay, this is it. Now I do know there is this little like, how do I explain it? It's like a spark effect that goes on top of somebody's head. But I feel like that's been there since pre-time skip. If it has, obviously I'll put the panel on the screen, but I feel like that's been there since pre-time skip, so I don't know what's really like, it doesn't really like change anything. Future Sight is the most messed up thing that Oda has put in the story, to the point where I don't think I can fix it. Like there isn't a single indicator he can do, unless Oda's gonna constantly draw the scene out that they've seen with their Future Sight and then have it play out in real time, or he's gonna let somebody say it every single time. I don't think there's a real way we're gonna get any indicators to if a character's using Future Sight or not. That's just the sad truth, because Future Sight is such a complicated ability to the point where it's like we don't really know when it's being used, unless it's like somebody like Luffy, who we believe uses it all the time, but sometimes we don't know. So sorry, I can't be the Messiah that saves Future Sight, but there is another ability that I can save though. Advanced Conquest is something that has been debated ever since it's dropped, and I feel like if Oda really wanted to knuckle down on that ability, he needs to give us like proper indicators, and the proper indicators in my eyes is confirming that they can use Conqueror's Haki, and then past that point, whenever they do an attack, have it have really bold black lightning, like how Luffy and Kaido had it in Wano. For instance, if Boa was to use Advanced Conquerors in the future, we would obviously know, since it's going to have really bold black lines. But if somebody like Kobe, let's say for instance Kobe used it against Pizarro on Hachinosu, if we got like, okay, him using Conquerors before, and then him obviously punching Pizarro with the black lightning, we would then know that, okay, Kobe has Advanced Conquerors. So really and truly, the only way that Oda can really knuckle down on it is having a character use Conquerors beforehand, or be stated to use Conquerors beforehand, and then have the black lightning streaks come off of them whenever they use it. With that, we can obviously sit back and be like, okay, cool, we know when somebody's using Advanced Conquerors, and that takes basically a lot of the, oh, do they have Conquerors, or are they even using Advanced Conquerors, off of our shoulders. And for the love of God, do not have any other characters use that damn small little stringent black lines unless they have Conqueror's Haki. That is the only time they should ever have the black lightnings come off of it. Only have it when it's attached to a conqueror. And if you're gonna have lightning, have it like white lightning like Sanji, so we know that that is not like some sort of conqueror ability. And honestly, with Almond Haki, I don't like, okay, I did say that he could just remove the other Almond Hakis, but I feel like they're excessive, but they're not too damaging to the story. Like, there isn't anything that I find personally that he really needs to change about Almond Haki at this point in time. Obviously, I prefer if it was just basic and you just kept it as that, but no, there isn't anything I really care about, like, that's damaging the story. And so with this section, I'm going to do a final little recap. But Almond Haki, just keep that the exact same. Observation Haki, I'd like a better indicator. I know, like, with certain things, he can't obviously always say, oh, they're using this, or oh, I saw the future, or whatever, but if he would just have like a better indicator for us, that would be nice. And then for Conqueror's Haki, he needs to tell us what makes a Conqueror, how Haki obviously exhausts you, and then for advanced conquerors, they all need to have black lines and some sort of like special kanji that goes along with it. Like, you know what would be really good is if you put like a kanji that says conqueror. That would, do you know how that would just clear up everything? Like, imagine somebody punched, right, and it said conquerors. Like, the kanji would say conquerors, like in a massive like sort of onomatopoeia like font, and it says conquerors. So we would know that, yeah, that's a conqueror. And obviously Viz don't really need to translate it so it has conquerors, because that would look ugly. But if what like all they could do is just have that as like, oh, conqueror in like in kanji, and that would literally, as I said, it would clear up everything. But no, if you guys enjoyed the video, you know what to do. I feel like this is more of a rant video halfway through, because there are so many things that I personally find is very annoying with how Oda portrays Haki in One Piece. And I know what he's trying to do with it, but he, in my opinion, if you really like, okay, if you really want to like talk to me about Haki and stuff, I know I gave those suggestions earlier with what I would have done, but if you really wanted to just leave it at keeping it at base armament so we can damage Logia, I would have been fine with that. That's a whole nother can of worms, man. I know my next video that I'm going to upload after this is going to annoy a lot of people, because it's like a versus battle. You're going to see it at the end. Don't worry, you're going to see it at the end. But yeah, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. So bye.
I know that ain't who I think it is.